Financial wellness. Reach out to them for advice at 855-DON-GINO. And now back to your hosts, Don Getling and Gino Fronti.
So, Matthew, we were talking in the break, and I teed it up a little bit right before we left, that not only can this have the emotional aspect, the pain for the children, the family law, the stress levels we talked about, heightened alert.
Right.
But the financial aspect, I mean, I can't imagine that, that your firm does this all pro bono. I know they don't do that.
No, we don't.
And I know that hiring a criminal law attorney is not cheap, not by prior experience. I can't confirm or deny. And but, ultimately, what does the financial impact of something like this look like for a family?
Well, it can be devastating. The family law, divorce cases, paternity cases, they're not cheap to begin with. When you add in this additional component of domestic violence, and if we go down the path where the perpetrator of the violence was actually arrested and taken to jail, they now have to post a bond and bail out of jail. That's a cost. They hire a criminal defense attorney. That's a cost. And like you said, they're not cheap. And then that adds further legal work that we have to do regarding the custody and the visitation and the housing situations, and it's just it can raise the costs of a standard divorce, and I'm saying standard in kind of euphemistically, exponentially. It can be far more expensive and can literally bankrupt a family.
Yeah, and I think all of us have traditionally thought of domestic violence as being abused or beaten or all these horrible, horrible things, but we talked about it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. It could be something as verbal, it could be harassment, it could be a set of keys, throw a shoe, something minor. So really important to probably think twice before you do something that would otherwise be less impactful than during a heightened alert situation.
Yes. Right. A long time ago, it used to be that if there was no physical evidence of physical harm, nobody would do anything with the domestic violence. And now, as I said, it could be excessive text messaging. It could be showing up at your ex-girlfriend's place of business or bars that she used to go to after she's told you to stay away under the harassment portions.
Scott, you're going to have to stop doing that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I do have a question.
Sure.
If somebody's in this situation, they're afraid they're being affected by this. I'm sure a lot of people just stay quiet and deal with it on their own. What would be the next step? What would you recommend how they would handle this?
I never recommend anybody handle this on their own, and I'm not saying that because this is what I do for a living. It's too emotional and too ripe for somebody to make a mistake to do it on their own if they're not experienced in it. Every attorney at our firm is experienced in handling domestic violence issues. Some of us obviously do more than others, but the Reape-Rickett Law Firm we have plenty of attorneys that can handle this for you and try to minimize as much damage as possible.
Yeah, I think one of the things of having a far reach like the Reape-Rickett Law Firm does is that although, and it's kind of the same thing that happens with Dawn and I, even though we're both mortgage professionals, we both have strengths, things that we're absolutely better than the other at. And so what we do is we focus on those specialties, and I'm sure you guys do the same.
Absolutely. We have some attorneys that do far better, let's say, with custody issues, and some that do it better with appeals issues, but every one of us is able to handle these types of issues with domestic violence.
Just curious, this is out of order, but with domestic violence, I'm sure most people think it's lower blue-collar people. It's affected, I'm sure it's white-collar people.
Everybody.
There's no prejudice to this at all.
No. I've had CEOs of corporations, and I've had the people that are handing out flyers and supermarkets type of thing. There is no boundaries for this. It can affect anybody. I mean, somebody who normally would be the most docile person in the world has a couple of drinks and gets pissed off at his wife. He's going to hit her, or she is normally, the model housewife, if you will, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, and then she gets upset talking to her friends, and next thing you know, she hits her husband. Domestic violence goes both ways, across both genders, across many different socioeconomic levels. It's not ethnically targeted at one group or another. It affects everyone.
It's interesting you say that, because during one of the breaks we did talk about for a moment that it happens just as regularly where women abuse men. Men just don't report it.
Absolutely. There's
Yeah.
a lot of studies to indicate that there's actually more men that are abused than women. And I don't have the statistics in front of me right now. My friend, who's also a family law attorney, has done a lot more research on it than I, and men just don't report it because of social stigma. You know, if a woman slaps him across the face, that's domestic violence. But when we see that on TV, we all laugh about it.
Right.
I mean, we all think it's kind of funny. Oh, look, she just slapped him across the face. But if he did that to her, he's going away in handcuffs.
Yeah, and that's interesting, as you look at those things, and I think it's becoming easier, Scott, over the years. I think it is starting to balance out a little more, and people starting to recognize equal rights, so to speak, and I think
To an
that
extent.
a little less machismo, so I think maybe a man would be more likely to report that these days than 20, 30 years ago, where it would be embarrassing. I
Well,
mean,
the difference you have, too, though, and I've seen this in court a lot, is when you have, like, a very big, strapping kind of guy and a little petite woman, and she hits him, slaps him, punches him, whatever the case may be, and people look at him in the audience and like, well, she can't hurt you. Why is this domestic violence? And it doesn't have to, there's nothing in the code that says you have to hurt the person. So it's a very misconstrued area of law in a lot of different ways.
yeah, so speaking of law, tell us real quick about Divorce Digest. I know you guys have a very popular blog. It's something I wish I did a better job at, is blogging. It's not my forte for sure, but something we'd like to work on. So tell me a little bit about that.
Our website and blog is at divorcedigest.com, and we have a lot of information there for people who just have general questions, kind of like the stuff we're talking about today, and they will get on, and all the attorneys in the firm take turns writing different articles on different subjects for that. That's divorcedigest.com.
So speaking of articles, all of us have an article being released this month in the Vault magazine, which is America's Professional Resource Group's quarterly magazine. I know my article this time was about, is there or is there not a bubble forming in the real estate market in 2016? We don't see one, but if you'd like more detail, please go to aprgi.com, and I go over all the reasons why bubbles form and why it doesn't look like one is forming right now, at least not temporarily. And Scott, what do you have this coming for us this quarter?
The article I wrote is, I think is the one I wrote. I wrote a couple, but making sure you have enough life insurance and what's the right type of life insurance you should be getting.
So speaking of that, life insurance, I mean, and I've talked about this, most of us are severely underinsured under the new model of what we talk about as how to insure your lifestyle. It used to be just get your house paid for. Well, there's no income replacement in that. So we talk about that, and you guys have had some great articles in the magazine as well. I don't know anybody that does as good a job as your firm of creating content. I mean, really, you guys do a great job. When we ask for articles for the magazine, you guys are like, here you go.
Well, it helps that we have so many people writing, too.
Yeah. So how many people in your firm?
Oh, there's, I think we're hiring more people right now as we speak. We're interviewing. I think right now we're at 8 or 9 attorneys, and then our support staff, and we have a full-time marketing person and bookkeeper and receptionist, and I mean, we're just exploding with people lately.
Well, that doesn't happen if you don't do a great job, and you did
Thank
a great
you.
job for us today. So tell us one more time how to get a hold of you in case someone feels that maybe they've been in a situation, they need a little advice. How do they get a hold of you?
I appreciate it. If you're in the Santa Clarita area, the number is 661-288-1000. And if you're in the San Fernando Valley or Ventura County area, the number is 818-888-1144.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Mathew with the Reape-Rickett Law Firm joining us today. Talking about a sensitive subject, but an important subject. And Don and I always talk about that this is guiding you to your personal and financial wellness. Today we talked about a subject that could affect both. So we thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you next Saturday. And check out our Facebook page. I'm going to post a link, see where Don's at. We're going to play Where's Waldo with Don in Baja. So check out our Facebook page. Go to donandgino.com, hit the Facebook logo, and let's see if we can figure out where Don's at on his ride. Thanks, Scott, for joining me today and being my co-host. I really appreciate it.
Had fun. Thank you.
And thanks for the first half of the show where we got a chance to talk about life insurance for a little bit and share some of my own personal experiences with life insurance, and Scott helping me out in reevaluating and restructuring my situation. So thanks again. We look forward to seeing you again next week.